evening. Welcome to another edition of the Michigan Conservative Roundtable. Marty, TJ, and Mac here today, and we want to talk a little bit about the president, President Trump. How much of a conservative is he really? And there's things pro and con we can say with regard to exactly how conservative he is. I'm going to start by throwing out the idea of the potential trade war and whatnot. I look upon that as a negative. And I realize I'm oversimplifying the issue a little bit right there, but conservatives are supposed to be free market, and raising tariffs and potentially igniting trade wars or whatnot, especially with a very critical election coming up next year, that worries me. That worries me that this could blow up in our face, and it doesn't strike me as particularly conservative.
I too have those concerns. The moral dilemma is, right off the top, I would say I'm against tariffs, but you're assuming both sides abide by the rules, and in China, you have theft of intellectual property only to sell that back at the cutthroat price of the very one they stole it from. So, I guess I get it, what he's trying to accomplish.
Well, and I would take issue with one thing in that. And I'm a free market guy as well. But we didn't start at square one. For a very long time, we've not been practicing, and you can go back even to Reagan's day, not practicing free market economics in its pure form. So, I don't think we can pretend. I don't think we can pretend that we're at square one. We're not, and there are consequences to trade deficits, and those can't be ignored or wished away.
Yeah, that's fair enough too, and I'm willing to concede myself that there's a bit of a difference between free trade and fair trade, and there are fair trade issues being involved. I mean, the easy one is if people are putting huge tariffs on American goods, then I don't mind. I don't mind reciprocity.
Right.
There's arguments that even that's not a good idea, but personally, I don't mind reciprocity in that sort of situation. Right. Yeah. I have wondered myself whether the president is a populist who acts conservative as opposed to a conservative who is popular, and I'll cite Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was a conservative who was popular. I wonder if President Trump is a populist who does conservative things.
Well, I'm going to make a comparison between Reagan and Trump here that I don't know if you guys have considered. But Ronald Reagan ran up huge debts. And that debt, correct me if you feel differently or if you think I'm factually wrong, he ran up those huge debts which eventually, along with Margaret Thatcher and Pope John Paul II, helped the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So you could say, were those debts worth it? I say they were. Mm-hmm. But that's not a conservative thing to spend money like it's water, which he did.
Mm-hmm. It's conservative to spend it on things like the military.
Yeah,
which is the most direct contributing factor.
It was military, but it was also political.
Yeah.
He saw an opportunity to finally, and like Trump, he's putting an end to the nonsense. I read a book by Ronald Reagan where he told his son Michael Reagan, he said, "Dad, why do you want to be president?" He said, "Well, I want to sit at the table with the Soviet leader, and when they throw out their demands, like they did, and we would go, okay, and we would go along with it." Reagan wanted to get up. And supposedly he did this. Get up, walk around the table, lean into the guy's ear and say, "Nyet." This is how it's going to happen now. And I feel that that's what Donald Trump is doing now with the trade war. Is he's saying this has gone on too long. It's got to stop. It's got to be corrected. We got to play on a level field if everyone's going to be happy. So he is putting himself and his re-election at risk to accomplish that goal. I can draw a parallel between Reagan's running up the deficit, which is not conservative, and what Trump's doing, which is not conservative. I think that sometimes you just gotta go out of the lane a little bit to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but one thing Reagan had to deal with too was the Democratic House.
Yes. Which
means sometimes to get things done, and constitutionally, all spending bills must originate in the House of Representatives.
And they haven't presented a budget, in about 14 years?
It's been quite a...
So they're not doing their job.
They're not doing their job, and there's a degree to which a lot of things got forced on President Reagan. because we weren't going to move forward at all without making certain compromises.
Right.
I'm not saying that excuses them entirely.
However,
But-
let me say another thing that was very different. Even though he had a Democratic House and there was no love between Republican and Democrat,
Still isn't.
it still isn't. But Tip O'Neill did work with Ronald Reagan.
Yes. Yes.
He didn't go out and say, he said his disparaging remarks about Reagan, but they're nothing on, close to the level that Trump gets.
Yeah.
No one was saying that Ronald Reagan was a white supremacist and a racist, and Walter Cronkite wasn't on the news calling Ronald Reagan a white supremacist and a racist, which is what happens in the media every day. So Donald Trump is fighting those things too.
Yeah, and that's quite true. That's quite true. For myself, I think I'd rather have a populist who at least acts conservative, than to have a conservative who doesn't really act conservative. And Reagan, I don't think, is in that category, but there are a lot of conservatives.
Ronald Reagan was
they say
not
the right
conservative
things.
enough for me.
Yeah, I more or less agree with that. Other than that, he did get through some very important things, such as the fall of the Soviet
That was a
Union.
pretty important thing.
Yeah, yeah.
For guys our age, we understand that.
Yeah, yeah.
Kids today, you say East Germany, and I think you mean East Germany, the east part of Germany.
East part of
They don't
Germany,
understand that it was a separate country,
Yeah.
ruled by a communist state,
Exactly.
and that those people were not free.
Exactly. Have I touched enough of a nerve here with Mac, TJ, do you think? I
think so.
Okay. Another thing, just to kind of continue with the pro and con thing, is, and we've mentioned this before in the MCR, I really wish the president would back off on his tweets. There just is a degree to, if you don't want to call it, well, I'll call it unconservative. To be insulting and put down is non-conservative. I think it's important to get above the fray as much as is practical. Sometimes you do got to get down and dirty. That's just the nature of things. But I really do wish he'd back. I don't find his tweets generally properly conservative.
I wouldn't disagree with that in its, take any individual tweet, but here's, in another video, TJ talks about taking the high road. Bush lied, people died, you just take it. Things are said, they're believed. Unless you say they're not.
Yeah.
Silence sometimes looks like an admission of guilt, rather than, I'm not going to say bad things about people. Here's what's happened with these tweets. There's been an effect that I don't think any of us saw coming. He's called these people out into the light as to what they really are. I mean, there was a time if you called a guy a communist, he'd punch your teeth in.
Yeah.
Even if he was a communist.
Yeah.
But not now.
Well,
they're out there saying, I'm a communist. I want socialism. I want to put white people in jail. Mm-hmm. So he's drawing that out with those tweets because they can't let the fight go either. He's playing their game.
Yeah.
And playing it better than they are.
Yeah. And I get that, and I don't really disagree with it, but I think you can make your point without necessarily getting too much into the mud and muck.
Well, give me some examples of where that's worked. Because I'm not seeing it. When I see...
I'm going to fall back on Ronald Reagan.
You go to Reagan. Reagan had
a lot of things.
He was much smarter.
A nicer guy.
He was much smarter than either of the Bushes.
Yeah.
Or these clowns that have run for Bob Dole. Great American Bob Dole.
Yeah.
Too liberal. Too easy to bend over for the left. McCain. That guy was just about stabbing people in the back. That's all he was ever about. Thinking he was going against the grain or he was some kind of innovative maverick when all he did was screw us. Mitt Romney, same thing. Goes against the president for the sake of going against the president.
But the one thing that comes to my mind with taking the high road while still making the point very, very emphatically is Ronald Reagan calling the Soviet Union an evil empire.
Yeah.
And he took a lot of flack for that, but he stood his ground.
Well, that was
Trump-esque. And that's the sort of thing it's Trump-esque, but, it was...
In its time.
In its time.
It was as outrageous as the thing as Trump said.
Yeah.
You remember people, oh my God, he said they're an evil empire, which they were.
Which they were. And that's the kind of thing I'd like to see a little bit more of rather than just flat out insulting,
I get what you're saying. I don't disagree on an individual basis. But here's taking the high road has not worked. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result. If you want a different course of action, then you have to take a different course of action.
Yeah, and I agree with Mac on that, just for the record. When I say take the high road, I don't mean don't fire salvos back at the people that are firing salvos at you.
Well, Jesus said, love your enemy
Yeah.
as you would yourself.
Yeah.
Can't
Well,
argue that, right?
With
No.
Trump, people say, the Republicans aren't pushing back. And then they complain about what Trump does. And, well, that's what pushback looks
yeah,
like.
Yeah, yeah.
All right? You want pushback? There it is. And that's it. That's pushback.
And you need to push back. You absolutely need to push back. I just feel like you can push back a little more emphatically, really, without just being insulting about it. I think you can.
I wish he, and this is wish, but I wish he would hammer them more on
Eh.
what they're really after, because I don't hear it many places. I think they're looking for global communism. I don't think the Soviet Union really ever went away in its entirety. I don't think Nazis have gone away in their entirety.
Well, there's an argument that evil doesn't come through the same door twice. Like, I always laugh a little bit, and I'm not trying to pick on you here. I always laugh a little bit when people worry, Nazis, 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 Nazis. It may be Nazism, but it'll be in
a
something
different
of
form.
different form.
I agree.
And that's
Yeah.
where we need to
No,
go.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Moving things along a little bit here, TJ, I see a very interesting item there.
All right. Well, earlier, Marty was basically pondering out loud the political positions or beliefs of President Donald Trump. And this book, and I read this book, heard about it on the radio, and it interested me so much I went to Barnes & Noble and got it. And it's Donald J. Trump, A President Like No Other, and it's written by Conrad Black, who is British, and he works in Canada, and he has a long history of business dealings with President Trump. And what made this book different than the typical book you might read about a president is, given Conrad Black's history with Donald Trump, the businessman, it gives some interesting insight to his soul, Donald Trump's soul. Something that another book or a political book of some sort either might not catch or for whatever reason not bring to light. Conrad Black is of the opinion that Donald Trump
Hold
really...
that still for a minute. At the
Oh.
camera so that...
Donald Trump is an independent. And if you recall, he would go on Larry King or whatever shows back then and kind of tease with the ideas of him running for president. And he was kind of kicking around the idea of being an independent because he didn't like what the Democrats was doing, but he wasn't comfortable with the Republicans either. And at some point he realized being an independent wasn't going to work. The Democrats had so far gone to the left, they were no longer an option, and he would become an independent running within the Republican Party. So then you have the Never Trumpers who, well, he's not a real Republican, and you know what? Maybe they were right, but so what?
Yeah.
And I would just suggest, if you want to understand why Donald Trump is the way he is, I would suggest this will give you insight into his soul. All right, and that's a shameless plug.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. We're nothing if not shameless. Just to backtrack a little bit on TJ talking about independence and everything, and Trump's identified more as Republicans. I don't necessarily see identifying as Republican as a good thing.
No.
But we've said ourselves we're conservatives first and Republicans second.
I'm not a Republican at all.
Yeah.
Because they're cowards.
Well, I agree with you on that, but there's just a practical matter of when the elections come up.
There's
no place else to go.
I think the difference between Republicans and Democrats today, or right and left, is that the vast majority of people on the left that are in the government, they're in a war. Okay, and they know they're in a war. The Republicans don't seem to know that they're in a fight. But the problem with this fight is that I'm the guy that gets the bloody nose, not Mitch McConnell or whomever. or Lindsey Graham or whoever you might want to pick.
Well,
Mitt
she's getting a
Romney.
little bit more of a backbone.
Well, what's his big problem? People are standing out in front of his house harassing him.
Well,
I
you
don't.
know, but I mean-
I wouldn't like that either.
Yeah.
And
No, I meant more that he is holding up legislation, and
Yeah.
he did hold out on Obama. What would have been an Obama Supreme Court.
well, that was their pick. That was
yeah.
their rule. The Biden rule was their choice.
Yeah, yeah.
So he just said, you know what? You made the bed. Now
Yeah.
sleep in it.
Which was gutsy of him, I
Yeah,
think.
right.
But I see what you're saying. Yes, Republicans are cowards.
He has said
No.
on more than one occasion, and I love this quote, the Democrats are kicking my ass and the Republicans are content to look the other way.
Yeah.
And you know what? Somebody needs to look our way, and that's why populism is growing in this world. And maybe we can talk about why populism is growing. During Brexit, the exit polling, I'm tired of being called a racist. I'm not a racist.
What amazed me on the whole Brexit thing was they voted to exit, and then they weren't exiting. It was almost like
Well,
the politicians.
Well, the government got involved. Yeah. I think you're about to say that.
It's just they voted to exit, but then the politicians ignored the vote.
Yeah.
right.
And
Yeah.
and then that
That's because they don't care what the common man thinks. They don't care about the common man getting the bloody nose in the fight they're not having.
Yeah, and I think that there's definitely a lot of truth to that, and with regard to the Brexit or whatnot, or I'm tired of being called names myself. My personal blog, The Sublime to the Ridiculous, I've pointed that out myself. I'm tired of being called names, and the Republicans aren't really helping to not have us called
I
names,
was so
and that's
desperate
not
for a
good.
political fighter on our side. I said, fine, you can call me a political pragmatist.
Mm-hmm.
I need someone who's willing to fight, right?
Well, Dennis Prager and Adam Carolla did a YouTube segment where they talked about what if we stopped apologizing?
And that was a good segment.
Yeah, what if we
That's a good
stop
segment.
apologizing? Because, again, when you apologize for something you really didn't do, and the Republicans do this all the time, they apologize for things they
Donald
aren't
Trump
guilty of.
does not apologize.
He doesn't, and that's what they said.
Yeah.
Donald Trump doesn't apologize, and they don't know
Whether
what
he's
to
right
do
or
about
wrong,
it.
he don't apologize.
Yeah, that's true. But he doesn't apologize. He certainly doesn't apologize for things that he didn't do. And they can't stand that because now, they've got a guy they can't control with
Yeah.
racist, white supremacist, and they're throwing them all out there.
Yeah.
I've been alive almost 60 years. I have not once in my life met a white supremacist. Not once.
Yeah.
I've seen them on TV, like a Geraldo, and these people are out of their damn minds, I would tell you. They're crazy.
The one thing to backtrack a little bit here, one of the things that worries me about populism is I wonder whether it's really principled at the end of the day. And that worries me. If people are just voting for things because this really appeals to me right now, which is essentially populism, then what's going to appeal to them in 5 or 6 years?
That's
And
not
we
an
get away
invalid
from
concern,
principle.
but
We
I
get
would
away
tell
from
you,
principle.
we are one election away from not having a country.
Well, we always
So I don't think we've ever been in this position.
Well, 1790s, yeah.
Well, not in our
1812s. Not in our lifetime, maybe, but yeah, I
Freedom is always under assault, and it always will
Reagan
be.
said we're never more than one generation away from
And I think he was right.
totalitarianism.
But I think we were very close. Hillary Clinton getting elected, appointing, if she appoints 2 Supreme Court justices instead of Donald Trump,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, you don't even need a Congress.
You can kiss the Second Amendment.
You
goodbye.
could, well, she said she didn't know if it really is a right.
Yeah.
Well, it's in the Bill of Rights. That ought to tell you something right there. And I believe it says the right of the people shall not be infringed.
And I would dare say it's probably in most state constitutions.
Yeah.
In the previous video, I mentioned Washington and Michigan. And Michigan's was just rewritten like 40, 50 years ago, so there can't be any debate on
And it's not
on
even,
its language.
yeah, you can't,
1963 is
you
another
could
fact, yeah.
wrongly, I would tell you, debate what the Second Amendment says. But in the Michigan and Washington, they're crystal clear.
Well, since we do try to be fair and see the big picture here, and since we've produced a lot of things that I think I'm at least willing to argue may be negative about President Trump, I think there are some positive things.
And I'll take exception with.
I'm going to defend the president when I think he's right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hell with the high road has been my attitude for a number of years now because the results are what matter. not the. And I'm not. You know this. I'm not an ends justify the mean guy.
No, you can't be. That's
I'm
not
not.
conservative.
But you do have to realize that if we're in a softball game and you get a hit and you run to first, I get a hit, you run to second, I run to first. But the other team, when they bat, they run to third and then run home.
You can't have that.
You can't have that, and that's what we have. They want to put 15 justices on the Supreme Court so they can have the majority. They look for
Which another great liberal did. FDR wanted to.
He wanted to do that, and that's very little known by people today. He wanted to add
He
justices.
wasn't getting what he wanted, so yeah.
Because he wanted to bypass the legislature. The left always wants to go to court and get. I mean, you see it with the Ninth Circuit. Whatever they want something, they run. That's where they go. They'll file the lawsuit in California. It goes to the Ninth Circuit. They get overturned more than any court I think there is.
Yeah.
Which.
And just recently, I think President Trump was able to put a conservative judge on that court.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's something, just remember I said positive things about President Trump, and I do have positive things to say. One of them we've already said is the court thing.
Yeah.
I've been very, very happy with the direction he's taking, not only the Supreme Court, but the lower courts.
I almost think he was trying to appease the Never-Trumpers when he came out, when he was running for president, and you had all these Never-Trumpers hating on him, and he came out with that list of conservative judges. And you know what? I think he did it in part to call out the Never-Trumpers.
Yeah.
Well,
he's
a deal maker, and he's saying, okay, this is what I'm offering. And I like that list.
Yeah, I do too. I like Amy. I can't think of her last name.
Yeah, I know who you mean. I would have rather had her than Kavanaugh, but
I would have rather her than Kavanaugh. But hopefully this is something that'll still come up. I mean, supposedly she's next on the list.
I don't remember a time in history, and you cited 1790 or whatever, but I don't remember a time when people were so willing to completely destroy a man's life as these people are today.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, though, Mac, and please take this as brotherly criticism. We all make the mistake of here and now is more important than anything else.
Well, it's when I'm living.
Yeah, it's when I'm living. Yeah. And I don't want to say that we shouldn't treat the here and now as very important, because it is. But the 1790s, we were really close to being rent asunder. The War of 1812, we were really close to being rent asunder.
The War of
Obviously, the Civil War,
Independence.
Second Independence, exactly. And that's not. At the end of the day, history is really going to be the thing that judges whether this was the worst time in American
I know
history.
people. Everyone thinks they live in the end times.
We don't want to be. We don't want to be. Historical arrogance is bad. Whether you think that this is the greatest thing.
Well, do you think God gives everyone a purpose?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe we're here now because this is where God wanted us to do what we're doing. Because it's needed now.
That can very well be.
I'm not going to look back to the 1790s because they're somewhat irrelevant other than the fact that you've got to learn from history. But here and now is the only place we can live. And it's the only place we can affect change.
I don't disagree with that. I just don't like to go too much of an extreme with anything.
Yeah.
And we've seen bad times before and we've gotten through them. I don't know.
And if you're a scripture believer, you know those times will get worse.
Yeah, well, there'll be an end time at some point.
Well, things will get worse before that end time as well.
Before that end time, yeah. But there's also an ebb and flow toward TJ. I almost feel like we're excluding you here, and I don't want to do that.
I don't want to disrupt.
Don't disrupt. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, that's what you're here for.
This is a discussion.
We're here to talk things
Well, I'm a political pragmatist, so I will err to that position. Sorry, and this is where I kind of agree with Mac. Right now, there's too much to lose. To me, being a political pragmatist is erring to the side of caution.
He and I are huge baseball fans. In 2006,
I am not.
Jim Leyland blew the World Series.
Absolutely.
Because of what? What did he do?
He started a rookie instead of a veteran.
Well, he looked to the next game.
He looked to the next
game that didn't get played. I think that's the mistake we can make as a people, thinking, well, let's look at all the other times where it could have happened and didn't. Well, this time it could happen. You mentioned in a previous video about the Civil War, all the things that could but didn't. But it did happen, and 639,000 people died. So that's what I think you have to focus on. What can happen? He and I are from the security field. That's the core of your life. Seeing the problem and making sure it doesn't happen. Not, do we have the right equipment when it does happen? Right?
Absolutely.
Right, T?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and I want to stress here that I don't disagree with anything that Mac or TJ here are saying or anything. I just, at the end of the day, I feel we've got to look forward as positively as we can. Otherwise we just become naysayers. And I don't want to,
I'm positive something needed to be done.
I don't disagree.
Something different.
Well, then let's stress what the positive thing is.
Yeah.
Then let's stress that we need to go this direction. These are the reasons we need to go there. I think, for my taste, that's why I can digest Ronald Reagan easier than I can digest Donald Trump, because Reagan appealed to the higher need, the shining city on the hill, more so. And I think at the end of the day, that appeals a little bit more to the 20% in the middle that we need to get if we're going to make positive change.
Well, a lot of
and sustain
Democrats
it.
voted for Reagan.
You had the Reagan Democrats, but I mean just in general. In 2020 right now, there's going to be 40% voting for the Democratic nominee, and there's going to be 40% voting for Donald Trump, which means we got to appeal to that 20% in the middle. And I'd rather try to appeal them on positive, uplifting grounds as much as we can.
Well, they believe they're losing. They believe they're losing the black vote.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to replace them with the Mexican or the Hispanic vote.
Yeah.
That's what this illegal immigration is all about.
Yeah.
It's about replacing black voters
Yeah.
who are finally coming out of their sleep and realizing that Democrats just screw them and they don't think any differently of them than they did in 1860.
Yeah.
They're to be used for whatever they need.
Yeah, they're to be used for whatever they need. I don't know, fellas. I'm not sure how long we've went because we don't have our timing up, and
That's okay.
I feel like this has been pretty productive in all
I think so,
honesty.
too.
And
I'd just like to say this is a good read. If you want to understand President Trump, this is the book. Conrad Black, Donald J. Trump, A President Like No Other. That's
for damn sure.
This gives you insight into President Trump's soul. All right?
well, one of the notes I made here that we didn't really get to, and I am consciously trying to wrap this up right now. And I do look upon, as maybe I'm talking out both sides of my mouth, and I apologize if I am. One of the positives I do see in him is he is certainly transparent. He'll stop and talk to the press when he's ready. He will throw out those tweets, and I'd rather have. It's nice to at least know where somebody stands than to have somebody trying to couch things.
It's interesting how he's gotten control of his press conferences. They don't hold them in that room anymore where the reporter can stand up and posture and pontificate.
Oh.
He's having them in the Rose Garden as he's walking to or from Marine One, and then he's got complete control, and now they're whining and crying about that. But here's the thing. You're seeing him for what he is, and I've said now in quite a few videos I believe he could be our most transparent president in quite some time.
And I agree with that. And I do like how he calls out the reporters. I do like how he'll point at people and outside
He calls a spade a spade
and says, "Hey, that's fake news. Why are you asking that question? That's a ridiculous question." And that sort of thing, I don't mind at all.
I wish he'd attack, like I said earlier, I wish he'd attack their policies more.
Yeah.
That's something he could learn from Reagan. He could sit down in an Oval Office meeting or have a fireside chat every Saturday and just pound home what these people are trying to do. And if they are able to accomplish what they want to do, there is no America. You won't be a free man. You will be a slave to the communist state.
We good, fellas?
I think so.
Talked out.
You know what? Thank everybody. Thank you all for watching. Please like us. Please share us. Please comment. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, like we always say at the Michigan Conservative Roundtable, be safe, watch your six, and don't tread on me.